Good morning from the Valley of the Sun. I always wanted to do that. Remember this? Good morning, Vietnam. Robin Williams, a talent gone way too soon. Listen, what you guys are seeing this morning is a drive through Tempe, Arizona. Tempe, Arizona is a college town. It's manicured beautifully. All the plants and everything have been all planned out. It's gorgeous. The university's there, Arizona State University. The kids are everywhere, bicycles and skateboards, and it's a jumping place. I mean, it's very popular. Outdoor patios where people can eat or dine, depending on the type and the quality of the restaurant, I guess. Young people congregate there, and old people congregate there. On hot summer nights, they have what's called sprays that spray mist water out to keep people cool. Also, as we go through this thing, you're going to see some driverless Uber cars. These are Volvos, SUVs, big cars. Listen, can you imagine calling to get a ride, say, to the hospital, and in your driveway pulls up a driverless car? Now, if you were in a wheelchair, I'm not too sure what you'd do, but everything in Tempe is progressive. You'll see it in the buildings, in the architecture. You'll see it in the way the town is laid out. It's beautiful. It's busy. It's popular. It's full of energy. Anyway, I guess the point that I'm making here is that on these Uber cars, you'll see them 1 through 4. It's a progressive area. And the cars are a lot different than the cars that I grew up with. My first car was a 1930 Model A Roadster convertible. Had a rumble seat in the back. I paid $100 for it. And when I got it, where I lived was about 15 miles from where I bought it. And it had the old wagon emergency brake on it. You'd reach down and squeeze a handle and pull it back, and it would put the emergency brakes on. And I had to use that because it didn't have any brakes. It was a really nice color of black and rust. So I got it home and decided that it needed a paint job. It had a little 4-cylinder flathead engine in it. I got it home, decided it needed a paint job, so I went up and bought some green paint. And got a paintbrush, painted the entire thing light green. Now, it wasn't a great color, but you could see it coming. And that old car would run 70 miles an hour. And back then, everything was simple. I put brakes on it. Took me about a half a day. Got all that done. Never did have a top on it, so if it rained, I got wet, but that was okay. I was very, very young. And I had that for a while. Met my first girlfriend in that car. It was so raggedy that her mother wouldn't let me take her for a ride, but nevertheless, it got me back and forth. So, and then I went in a grocery store one time and bought a pack of cigarettes, most likely Marlboros, because that's what I smoked. Back then, it was a big deal to wear a white t-shirt and roll your package of cigarettes up in your sleeve so that they were convenient. Anyway, there was a sign on the counter that said car for sale. And I asked her, I said, what kind of car is it? And she said, well, it's a 39 Chevy. And she said, my husband died and I don't drive and it's in the garage. So I said, well, how much do you want for it? And she said, oh, I don't know, $50. I said, can I see it? And she said, yes. So I went over to see it. And it was a 1939 Chevrolet Business Coupe, metallic gray with a lot of metallic in the paint. And I opened the door and the interior was like brand spanking new. It had the old twist knop radios, and the aerial for it was underneath the running board on the side, and they were in perfect condition. The trunk was perfect. It was perfect. So I went back and gave her the money and got it, took it home, and I started hand rubbing Simonize on it to bring the paint out. And I got it done, and it was absolutely beautiful. I would drive that car to the mountains, and I never drove it very fast. It only had 34,000 miles on it when I got it. Never drove it very fast, but you get a certain height up in the mountains, a certain altitude, and it would get what they call vapor lock. Well, vapor lock was a combination of heat and air in the gas line, and the car would just quit, so I'd have to let it cool off and start it and drive it on. But it was a good car, and it was so good that my brother-in-law talked me into trading it for his 51 Mercury. 51 Mercury back then was a beautiful car, very quiet, very powerful, and that was pretty much my car experience. I, through my life, have had probably 20 or 30 different cars. Always liked cars. But that's pretty much it. Now these Uber cars have drivers in them 1 through 4, but it's a fantastic thing to see those going down the road. It blows my mind. I think probably because I'm so old, but it's the coming future. I don't know who else is doing it, but I know out here Uber's doing it. A little bit about the weather here in the valley. In the summertime, of course, it gets ungodly hot. That lasts for, I don't know, 60 to 90 days. And then, of course, along in September, it starts cooling off. So from September through the rest of the year and then on into the spring, it's gorgeous. You couldn't ask for any better weather. Of course, there's snow in the mountains. People go up there and ski and this and that. But here in the valley, we begin in September and October, November, and even into December. We begin to fill up with what we call snowbirds. They use the same terminology, I imagine, in Florida and different places, but that's another thing. We need to keep the people in Florida in prayer. They're about to have this Hurricane Irma, and that's going to be an ugly situation as I understand it. I don't think they've had at least they're saying on television, they haven't had a storm that big, that powerful on record. So we need to keep them in prayer. But out here in the valley, when the snowbirds get out here, you got to be very careful when you drive, because I've seen them turn, and it's just because they're old like me, but I've seen them turn out of the far right lane, make a left turn into going a different direction. And there's not a whole lot of warning there. They just seem to turn. They just seem to turn and go on, you know. But occasionally there's a wreck, but most generally they do pretty good. And one of the things that I always enjoy doing when my wife is shopping, say at Walmart, is I'll sit there on the parking lot and watch the snowbirds come out, and invariably they'll be hunting cars. And when you get 3 or 4 of them doing it at the same time, what you can do if you want to have a little fun is honk your horn, because they're all pressing their horn honking buttons. And when they hear a horn, why, of course, all of them will go in that direction. Or if you're sitting over here and you honk the horn, they all go in this direction. It's kind of like watching ducks or something. But I find that rather humorous. It's kind of mean, and I don't do it too often, but if you get a bunch of them out there wandering around, it's kind of fun to watch them go back and forth. Samantha, it's kind of fun to watch them go back and forth. Of course, we're not getting any younger, and My wife and I have been talking lately of whether or not we need to slow down, but we're continuing to look at RVs. Also, we're beginning to look at single-wide mobile homes on their own ground that I can fence in and let Samantha run. Also, I've been reading up on how to plant a garden in the desert. And there's just certain things that'll grow out here unless you've got them covered so that the sun can't cook them. But we've been looking around at that. We've been looking at fifth wheels, as you know. Been looking at motorized units also. Weaving some pop-ups, but of course that's too small to live in, at least for us. I've read some articles where people do live in those. As a matter of fact, they live in Class B's, panel vans. But that's what we've been doing with our spare time lately, and also I'm still working on manuscripts, and have been doing that, and I'm about to finish I'm working on the book of Genesis, and when I get it done with commentary, why I'll have that published in paperback, so that will be available. If you want to see my stuff, just go on Amazon, Bernard Albertson, and all that stuff will pop up. My books aren't overpriced, but and I don't really make any money off of them. I give quite a few away, actually. I ran across a full-blooded Apache Indian that works in my doctor's office, and my two novels, or In Search of Home, and the other one, Copper Penny, have Indians, and it pays compliments to them, and I was interested in how they lived. Of course, for 2,000 years, they had all their own medicine and everything else before the missionaries came. And I saw a saying one time. It said, the Indians used to own the land, and the missionaries owned the Bible. But when the missionaries came in, the missionaries now own the land, and the Indians own the Bible. So that's it for today. I love you guys. Bye-bye.